Okay, so here we go. 12.1a, arithmetic sequences in series. So we're going to focus on the arithmetic sequences that we learned about yesterday. When you hear the word arithmetic, what is the other word that you should have in your mind also? Not arithmetic. Linear. Okay? These are our linear equations. Yes, we will be talking about some others as well. We will not particularly focus on quadratic ones. We will mainly focus on our linear ones and our exponential or our geometric ones. Okay? So exponential goes with geometric, arithmetic goes with linear. All right? So, the first questions on these notes, I'll come back to what's written at the top in a few minutes. But right down here, what does it say to do? Determine if each sequence is arithmetic. How do I determine if a sequence is arithmetic or not? How did you determine on your posters if you had a linear or arithmetic sequence? The pattern. Okay, so where did you start? How would I start here? I would look at 5.2 and I would think what? Anybody? How do I get from 5.2 to 5.9? Plus 0.7. Now, if this is a linear relationship, what should also be true? 5.9 to 6.6 is also 0.7. Since those two match, do I have an arithmetic sequence? Yes or no? Yes, it is arithmetic. Okay. Let's see. The rest of the instructions. Determine if it's arithmetic. We just did that. If it is, so because I got a yes, I got to go on. Find D and write the next two terms. Well, writing the next two terms should be pretty easy. I'm just going to give myself two blanks here. How would I find the next term after 6.6? I would add 0.7 again. So 6.6 plus 0.7 is 7.3. Plus another 0.7 is 8. So there's my next two terms. Now it says find D. What is D? If we look up here, it is known as the common difference. In other words, it's the number that's being added each time. So in this case, our D value is 0.7. Does that make sense? Now, with arithmetic sequences, you will always either add the same number each time or subtract the same number each time. As soon as you get into multiplying and dividing stuff, that is no longer a linear or arithmetic relationship. Okay, that would fit into one of the other categories. Right now, we're not trying to determine what type of sequence it is. We are merely trying to identify, is it arithmetic or not? If it's not, I don't need to go any further. I don't need to say whether it's quadratic or exponential. I just need to say, is it linear or not? Does that make sense? Good answer. All right, so let's look at this one. How would I determine if it is linear or not? From 4 to 5, you add 1. From 5 to 7, you add 2. And from 7 to 10, you add 3. Now, there is a pattern, but is it a linear pattern? No. So, is it arithmetic? Not arithmetic. I can't write and talk at the same time. Metic. Not arithmetic. So, when the instructions say determine if it's arithmetic, if it is blah, 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 do I need to do the blah, blah, blah? No, because it doesn't fit that if it is part. So, I'm done with that one. That was easy, right? So, excuse me, let's see. D was important. Now we get into a little bit of different instructions. It first says find the common difference D. So I am assuming that it's arithmetic if they're telling me to find the d value, because if it's not arithmetic, it doesn't have a d value. So let's verify, but to get from 4 to 9, what would you do? You would add 5. From 9 to 14, you would add 5. From 14 to 19, you would add 5. Does that seem arithmetic to you? Sure does. And what would my common difference d be? It would be 5, because that's what you're adding each time. So I got that answer. What does it tell me to do next? Find an explicit formula. Now they have it written with this right here, and we read that a sub n. Why do you think I say sub? Because the n is subscript. That's how you would read it. And I have an a sub n formula up here. This says that to find any term, you take the first term of the sequence, you add the common difference multiplied by n minus 1. And then there's this right here. Now this is actually how we thought about it yesterday. Because when we had to type stuff into our computer, we typed in y, which we know means f of x, correct? And we did x's. We didn't do anything with n's, correct? So both of these are saying the same thing. It's just two different ways of writing it. I am going to focus on this way of writing it right here. Okay? So I'm going to have to change a couple of things. When it says find the explicit formula, and it says a sub n, that means I want to find what f of x is. Okay? So, f of x is equal to, are you ready? The first number that I put in my formula, or my equation, is the first term of the sequence. What's the first term of the sequence? 4. So this is the first term. Okay? Now I put plus, and I'm putting plus because my d value is positive, because that's what comes next. If my d value was negative, what do you think that plus would be? A minus. And then I put a parentheses, x minus 1. And again, that 5 is your d value. Can I simplify this formula? I can do distributive property, can't I? F of x equals 4 plus 5x minus 5 if I distribute that 5. So in other words, f of x equals 5x minus 1. That would be my explicit formula. So from my explicit formula, can I identify what d is? Isn't d the slope of that line? Because I have mx plus b. So d is my slope. Is b my first term? No, because I ended up doing some combining like terms. So I can't pull the first term out of here as easily, but I can get my d value pretty easily from there. All right, what's the last thing I need to do in this problem? Find term 50. Now again, they're using that a notation. What that means is I need to find f of 50. Well, if I have an equation, how do I find f of 50? What do I do? Plug in 50 for x. What is 5 times 50? 5 times 50? 250 minus 1? 249. So the 50th term on that list is 249. Why do we pick such a big number, the 50th? Or yesterday it was what, the 47th or the 43rd or something like that? Why do we pick a term so far down the sequence? So you can't just count it down from the sequence. We want you to have to rely on that formula. Okay? All right, questions about that one? All right, let's do the fraction next. Some fractions, some not fractions. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the two fractions because I think it's pretty easy to see how do you get from 8/3 to 10/3. You add 2/3. So I'm thinking that my common difference is 2/3. How could I verify that? Well, what's 10/3 plus 2/3? 12/3. Does 12/3 simplify to 4? It does. What would have been this way? 2/3 before 8/3. 6/3. Does that reduce to 2? Yes. So I do have my D value. My D value is 2/3. Now, is it okay to put 0.67 there? Here's your general rule of thumb. If they are dealing in fractions, they are giving you fractions in the problem, you need to stay talking their language. Stick with fractions. Up here, they gave you decimals, so decimals are perfectly reasonable to give them back. But if they give you fractions, you stick with fractions. Capiche? All right, so I have my D value. Now I need to find an explicit formula. What does A sub n really mean? It means I need to find f of x. Excuse me. So, f of x is equal to, what's the first thing in my formula? 2, the first term, right? Plus what? My D value, which is 2/3, times x minus 1. Do I box it and call it a day? No, I need to do distributive property and get it all simplified. So it's in that mx plus b form, right? So f of x is equal to 2 plus 2/3 x minus 2/3. Okay? F of x equals, I've got my m x. Now I got to figure out how do you do 2 and minus 2/3. Well, you could think back to the fact that 2 was equal to what? 6/3 up here. Minus 2/3 would be 4/3. That's one way. Or if I'm not comfortable with that, I can always go to my calculator and say what is 2 minus 2/3 using my fraction button. It will give me an improper fraction. So if I hit second and my fraction button again, there's my 4/3. Okay, so I can go either way. I have it in the y equals mx plus b form. So there we go. All right, last thing I need to find out here. Term what? 7. So not a sub 7, but f of 7, right? So let's see. F of 7, how do I find that? I plug in what? 7 where there's an x. Oops. That should be a 3. And then 7 plus 4/3. Should I call that 7 a 7 over 1? Just to make life easy. So let's see. What's 2/3 times 7 over 1? 14 over 3, right? 2 times 7 is 14. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 4/3. What is 14/3 plus 4/3? 18/3. What is 18/3?
6.
So the 7th term on the list would be the number 6. Okay? So? All right. Why don't you take a minute and work on this last one? All right, so I'm going to start slowly working on this. Did you get your D value? What's their D value? Is it negative 8? So f of x is equal to 60. I'm not going to write plus 8. I'm going to write minus 8, because I'm really doing like plus negative 8, which would simplify to negative 8, or minus 8. So let's see. 60 minus 8x plus 8. I have negative 8x plus 68. Is that what you got? Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay. Now what term do they want me to find?
11.
The 11th. So f of 11 would be equal to negative 8 times 11 plus 68. Negative 8 times 11 would be negative 88 plus 68.
Negative 20.
So f of 11 is equal to negative 20. Okay? All right. So here comes your homework. I want to talk to you a little bit about your homework. I want to talk to you a little bit about your homework just to make sure that everything is understood. So for numbers 1 through 6, it says determine if the sequence is arithmetic. So your answer at first is going to be yes, it's arithmetic, or no, it's not. If it is, so if you have a yes, you have to tell me what D is and the next 3 terms. So if you get a yes, tell me what D is and tell me the next 3 terms. If you get a no, just stop right there. Pretty easy? Okay. Down here, you are given the explicit formula, but you are given it in that other notation. So here's what you need to think about this as. This is really f of x instead of a sub n is equal to, and they kind of have it backwards, which is fine. It's negative 3 plus not 20n, but 20x. That's the way you need to think about that equation. Does that make sense? It says find the common difference. What did we determine was the common difference when I have it in this form? Isn't the common difference the same as the slope? So what is my common difference here? Positive 20, because my slope is right there. And then it says find the first 5 terms. Well, how would I find the first 5 terms if I've got that? Well, to find the first term, I would find f of 1. Right? 20 times 1 is 20, plus negative 3 is 17. What would the second term be? I would plug in 2 for x. 20 times 2 is 40, plus negative 3 is 37. And I could keep plugging in, or since I know that my D value is 20, couldn't I just continue adding 20? So what? 57, 77, 97, and there's the first 4 or the first 5 terms of my sequence. Does that make sense? Okay, turn to the back. I want to make sure everybody understands. The word problem I'm going to let you look at. But the rest of these, it says determine if the sequence is arithmetic. So just like you did on the first one. Some of the copies did not come out very clear here. On number 9, it's 1, comma 1/3, comma negative 1/3, comma negative 1. So if it is arithmetic, you have to answer these things. D, we know what it is. What does it mean when it says find a sub n? Find f of x is what it means. And then when it says find a of 20, it means find f of 20. So using that notation. If your answer is no, it's not arithmetic, then you just ignore the D, f of x, and f of 20, or whatever letter they're asking you, or whatever term they're asking you to find. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Happy studying.